Hi, this is Conversations with the Capones coming to you live with breaking news.
Almost.
So the HHS and the VA have signed a memorandum of understanding. It's a 5-year agreement. The VA, so the Department of Veteran Affairs, and Department of Health and Human Services, it's HHS, they've signed a 5-year agreement to work together on new mental health treatments for veterans, including psychedelic-assisted therapy and other rapid-acting treatments. And the goal is to move these promising treatments from research into everyday clinical care for veterans once they are proven safe and effective and once they receive approval from the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration.
This is particularly exciting because no one really knew it was happening. And it was like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden here comes Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Collins out to sign this memorandum of understanding. And what this does is basically like create this intentional partnership, willingness, whatever you call it, to work together to make sure that veterans are enrolled in the clinical trials happening. This is one of our biggest talking points at vets. It's like there's the resurgence of psychedelic research. No one's really understanding that it's been philanthropically funded. So what happens when government funding comes in? There's been a resurgence of psychedelic research in the United States over the last, say, 2 decades. But what many don't know is that it's mostly philanthropically funded, and then veterans are largely excluded from the research that is happening. Why is that?
Why are veterans excluded from clinical trials? Most clinical trials focus upon a single indication and a single treatment. And most veterans that come forward with any type of mental health issues usually have comorbid diagnosis. So what that means is they either have PTSD and substance use disorder, anxiety, depression, OCD, etc. These drug development companies search for perfect individuals for a perfect trial because they're trying to achieve perfect results. And we just don't live in a perfect world. And again, many veterans, when they raise their hand and they're asking for help, they most likely will be excluded from these clinical trials. So what this does, it opens up the door for veterans to have access to these clinical trials because it's basically unfair. It's unfair that a veteran who's worked so hard, who's deployed overseas, who's fought for this country, gets excluded. And what stood out to me in this MOU was a few different things. One, this MOU expands and it coordinates clinical trials so more veterans can take part in the studies of psychedelics and other rapid-acting treatments. That's one. Two, this enables the ability to train more doctors, nurses, and therapists and other clinicians how to safely deliver these therapies if and when the FDA approves them. Three, this allows the sharing of data across different departments, so sharing data and research findings with the FDA and other parts of HHS, so regulators have timely, real-world information about safety, efficacy, and cost. And then 4, this develops clear clinical guidelines and educational materials so veterans and providers all understand what these treatments involve, how they should be used, how they should be administered, et cetera.
It's huge. It's huge. It matters for so many reasons. And I think, it matters to veterans because it's a clear signal that things are changing. It matters to those outside of the veteran community or policy community because the VA system is the largest healthcare system in the world. And so when the VA adopts something and gets serious, gets behind something, that sends a clear signal basically just throughout all medical systems that this is something worth looking into. And all those other systems are the ones that serve everyday Americans. So this is hugely important.
Yeah, and so on that, for the external partners, so the health systems, the academic centers, the nonprofits like ours, and industry overall, the agreement signals, one, a strong federal commitment to rigorous large-scale research on psychedelic-assisted therapies, other rapid-acting treatments for severe mental illnesses or mental illnesses in veterans, a coming need for collaboration on workforce training, protocol development, infrastructure, community outreach to ensure, safe, equitable access once these treatments are approved. And finally, this allows a clearer regulatory and policy environment for engaging in clinical trials. So implementation, research, and supportive services focused mainly on veteran healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we've been advocating for years for psychedelic-assisted therapies to be studied. So, it has an emphasis on research, but it also goes further because it's saying when the research is favorable, we think it will be favorable. And if the treatments are to be offered inside the VA, they're also preparing for that. It's not like, okay, we've launched a study, like quit your squawking. It's like, all right, what if the study is successful? Then what? And so being ahead of it now, because there's going to be a lot of coordination. These are not treatments that have been commonly used in our medical system. They're going to be used in a clinical capacity versus like a retreat capacity. Clinicians and doctors who might be familiar with them or have read about them don't necessarily know how to administer them. They're a lot longer than your traditional treatments. It's not a take home and call me in the morning. It's not a come into my office for a quick, shot of this or appointment with that. It's like, this is a huge paradigm shift.
Yes, overall. A paradigm shift in treatment protocols. We got a taste of that with Spravato, the, ketamine derivative that, J&J brought through the FDA. It's a 2-hour treatment. It's not like your typical pharmaceutical treatment. Many of these psychedelics many of them are longer than 2-hour treatments. Some of them 4, some of them 6. If we're talking about something like an Ibogaine, and potentially even longer. Some of them are shorter. So, groups like Thai, who's bringing a 5-MeO DMT nasal spray through the FDA, probably going to be shorter than that 2-hour treatment. So
can you imagine doing 5-MeO in your psychiatrist's office?
Yeah, we were talking about that today on the call. It's, you just can't read about that today in your Harvard or Yale, medical guide when you're going to medical school. So this is definitely a paradigm shift, and the whole system is going to need to change as we work through these issues. There was a point I heard yesterday which made a lot of sense. What this is not going to do is give access to veterans for these treatments right away. So these treatments, or say these drugs, still need to go through the FDA. They need to go through their phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, get FDA approved, and then veterans would have immediate access to these treatments. In the past, many of these drugs have been through the FDA, and then they just go off into corporate America. Veterans still don't have access. The VA has to do their own studies. That's what this really does, is once those drugs get FDA approved, veterans have access to them immediately through the signing of this MOU.
And you know what that signals to me? All of this tireless advocacy has finally started to pay off. Sometimes when you're advocating, especially in Washington, D.C., it literally feels like you're eating an elephant. It's like one bite at a time. You get on a plane, you're exhausted at the end of 2 days of lobbying. Sometimes you're meeting with staff. Sometimes you're meeting with the lawmakers themselves. They say what you want to hear behind closed doors. Not a lot gets done. There are champions on this for sure. But, then you have to go back and you have to do the social media spots, the traditional media spots, all the things that have slowly chipped away at this. So I think this is a great opportunity to acknowledge how much work has gone into this. And I'm not talking just about vets. I'm talking about even the people. Rick Doblin comes to mind. He believed in these therapies like so
35 years ago
that, almost 4 decades ago, he started on this quest to really arrive where we are today, where these therapies are coming through the FDA. So there was an underground that kept it alive, spirits like Rick that kept it alive. And then when the veterans came into the mix and started advocating, I think people thought they'd go away, like, oh, this is just another thing. And I mean the veteran community, haven't.
But I think all those meetings that you're talking about that we've had with Secretary Collins and his team, multiple meetings with ARPA-H, this has paid off for all the groups that have been involved. I think it started with the early win in Texas. Was it HB 1802?
It definitely goes back
Yeah.
to HB 1802.
1802.
And we were involved in the Texas Ibogaine Initiative too. But honestly, the Texas Ibogaine Initiative would not have happened probably without HB 1802 because the state had already seen this legislation. We'd already had a playbook for what success looked like. We had our absolute superstar behind the scenes. You know who I'm going to say?
Logan Davidson.
Both bills, Logan Davidson, who's just absolute rock star, he basically ran the strategy for both bills and replicated 1802, which was the first psychedelic legislation passed in the state. The representative he was working for was Alex Dominguez. And when they contacted us to support, little did we know that we would get that thing passed in the same session, and it would go on to set the stage for Ibogaine.
So you had 1802, you had the Texas Ibogaine Initiative.
Yeah.
You had the Mike Day Act.
Yeah.
You had In Waves and War.
Yeah. Stanford study is a huge part of it.
The Stanford study, which really kicked off everything, actually, because the Stanford study was before 1802. Stanford study is the data that was provided to the state of Texas to initially pass 1802.
No. That was happening at the same time.
So
we didn't have the Stanford. Yeah, delete that. Stanford study was happening in parallel with 1802.
Okay, so we had 1802. So we didn't have the data yet. So we had 1802, the Texas Ibogaine Initiative. We definitely had the data from Stanford. I mean, that's what moved everything.
And we remember we showed the film.
And we showed the
twice.
Film. So you had the data. We showed the film. We showed the film in D.C. So we got more lawmakers who didn't look at this as just another bill coming across their desk. We actually put some realism to it, and they got to see that these are real people and real families that are being affected by this. What else in the recent times?
Well, all the veteran advocates and the groups that have really been pounding the pavement. The state work has put upward pressure, I think, on the federal government, and simultaneously in states and on Capitol Hill. There's just been a constant drumbeat of this topic. A little bit of disjointedness, I will say. Like, we've been in a lot of offices where they're like, I keep hearing about this, but like no one has the same message. But at least I guess the message was somehow being heard consistently enough. And there are a lot of people who have been part of that.
Right. And then I think it culminated with the executive order signing, which we were part of with many other groups. So the executive order gets signed. Then what happened after that? There was another.
Well, the executive order is what really prompted this. So the executive order directed HHS to work with the VA to make sure that veterans were prioritized. I mean, how unfortunate would it be if veterans have spent all these years advocating and all this money leaving the country, and then we finally have like some degree of success here in the U.S. and they're not enrolled in studies because of these inherent issues with their complex health histories. That would be horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason that we've been doing this work from day one, 2017, 2018. So the executive order gets signed, and then just today we see that Atai Beckley gets acquired by a massive pharma company, Eli Lilly. And again, I know there's many of us out there listening, we don't love big pharma, but it gives...
It's a signal.
It's a signal, and it gives us more tailwinds when we're having these conversations that, there are more big players involved. They're looking at these treatments as legitimate treatments. Otherwise, the big boys would never be stepping in. So it really just gives us more wind in our sales to continue moving forward. So all this that's happening now is, what I initially thought was a headwind a couple years ago. Matthew Perry's incident. There was real like headwinds, and then Lykos not getting MDMA through the clinical trials. So you had all these headwinds, and now we're seeing these tailwinds start to pick up, and we're going to ride the wave and ride the momentum and continue on because it's really exciting. There's a lot more outreach to us now because what's been happening, and so we'll just keep going back to work, business as usual, and
Great
keep fighting.
Great time to plug with your wave analogy. In Waves and War, available on Netflix, streaming since November 3rd of last year, highlighting the work of our organization Vets, where every week we provide funding for 5 or so veterans to leave the United States for access to psychedelic therapies. Most of them are choosing Ibogaine. They don't have to. We believe in Ibogaine, but we're so excited that the executive order sort of applies to everything, not just Ibogaine, because Ibogaine has some inherent risks that are different than other psychedelics. And
real risks. And even though Ibogaine's been a popular drug that people have been talking about, but we're talking about all psychedelics, right? We're talking about psilocybin, 5-MeO, DMT, ketamine, MDMA.
Yeah,
it's all happening.
They all hold promise. More research is needed. Veterans are finding significant healing, and it's an avenue that we need to continue running down. We're not saying that these compounds are going to solve the world's problems, nor are we saying that they're for everyone, but we are saying that research should happen.
And these tools need to be available, right? This is not for everyone, like you said, but we need more tools available for individuals that don't respond to traditional treatments such as antidepressants, talk therapy, SSRIs, SNRIs. So it's really exciting.
So good job, veterans. Good job leading the way, honestly, on what could be your most important mission yet, which is opening up hearts and minds and research and funding for a potentially better way to treat our nation's mental health crisis.
And good job, Amber, for leading the charge of Vets.
Well, thank you. That's a dual effort. That's a multi-person team effort for sure.
Yeah.
But
you're
honestly,
the captain of the ship, and you do such an incredible job.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
But honestly, I really want to use the last couple seconds here to shout out Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Collins for that monumental, epic show of support. Even if the MOU, like worst case scenario, not much happens over the next 5 years.
I argue that a lot's going to happen over the next 5 years.
For sure. No, I'm saying like just the significance of it alone, just showing up together, signing together, and giving veterans hope that literally that signing alone could save someone's life.
Yeah.
Someone who's like, there's no hope for me. I've tried everything. And then you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah,
stuff is changing.
Many of us have been there, and we've had to travel outside the country for these access to these treatments. So
yeah,
I think on that note, stay tuned. Excited to bring you this update with conversations with the Capones, and we'll see you soon.